Hello, everyone. My name is Zunera Mazhar, and I am the head of policy and government affairs for the Digital Chamber. We're the largest trade association focused on digital assets and emerging tech. It is my pleasure to be here today with Senator Ruben Gallego of Arizona. As a ranking member of Senate Banking Subcommittee on Digital Assets, Senator, you have become one of the leading Democratic voices shaping the future of digital asset policy. You were one of the only two Democrats to vote to advance Clarity Act out of the Senate and to advance the Clarity Act in May to keep negotiations moving. Today, as we all know, President Trump had a few people from industry and SEC and CFTC at the White House, and he asked the Congress publicly to move Clarity Act forward, and he said, fair version of Clarity Act. What does that mean to you?
Well, and thank you for everyone. Can you hear me? It's very crowded in here. A couple of things, I think, unfortunately, what the president means is fair to him, because we actually haven't heard of any of a proposal back. And so we've had, 5 to 6 Democrats in the room negotiating for quite a while on different elements, right? And I've been working on specifically on ethics this time around versus the Genius Act. I was kind of working on the whole aspect of it. And when we're dealing with 2 practicalities, right? You need 60 votes in order for this to pass. Part of that is that we're going to have some very fair ethics language to it that encompasses every elected official, federal elected official, cabinet member, vice president, and president, right? That we feel we could constitutionally regulate their interactions with digital assets. And what we had was myself and especially Senator Tillis from North Carolina was specific language that we thought was a compromise that doesn't go full of what a lot of the Democrats want, which I think would have potentially just automatically created a veto, nor is it a fully deregulated system that would allow the potential manipulation from this administration. Something that I think is workable, that gets you, not just 60 votes, potentially 65 and more votes, that brings confidence to the market, that would instill a structure that all elected officials would have to abide by and would not be punitive. That is what I had worked on before I even voted for it in committee. And in committee, the reason I voted for it is because I felt like we had done well. We had done a lot of good work, and I didn't want it all to go to waste just because we weren't at 100%. And so I continued pushing forward. Again, as you said, it's one of the few Democrats that voted for it. And then when I came out of that meeting, the next time we all met, all that work that we had really been previously agreed to was just taken back by the administration and by some of my Senate colleagues. And that kind of caused, I think, a lot of this, the rift that we have now.
So just to pull a little bit on that ethics thread, we had Senator Lummis here and Senator Tim Scott yesterday, and they talked about how President already has agreed to some unprecedented terms that has never been done before. What would you say to that? I mean, we are in historic times where a president is agreeing,
Sure.
to this, and so to go from there to say we're still not, it's not good enough. What is the key missing piece for you?
Well, look, we're not looking for home runs. We're looking for at least doubles here, or a single, right? The president's agreeing to, some limitation. It's not his place to agree. It's the place of the Congress, the Senate, and then the White House, right? So there's 3 players involved in this. There's also a math problem. You have to get to 60 votes, right? And part of that's going to be, the president just doesn't get to decide what level of regulation he gets. Lastly, not necessarily lastly, but the president has been very clear what that looks like, right? We've been sending offers over and over again to the White House, and they've been coming back either blank, or they've come back even sliding further back, or we've heard nothing, right? Since our last approach to the president prior to the recess, Senator Tillis and I sent language over to the White House. There has been no specific response to that, a point-by-point response. All we've gotten is down at this grander, bigger vision of I want something fair and I want it done now. Well, that's not how this works, right? Talk to us, work with the legislation that we've been working on, and then we can see we create the votes around something like that. But that's not exactly how they're engaging in this product. And look, I've been working very well and with all due respect, and with full respect to Senator Lummis. It's been a great working relationship with her. I really do respect her. And with a lot of the other Republicans that we worked with, we've been working a very, very good bill. And I think there's still time to actually get this done. And I hope they understand that rushing this will not get the situation, will not bring the outcome that they want. This is the same thing that happened during Genius Act, where they thought they could rush it and create a scenario where there would be an outcome that would be beneficial to potentially partisan reasons for them or for the Genius Act in general, and ended up being wrong. And what happened is we all sat down in the room after we filibustered it, and we got a good product out. We can do the same here, but we don't have to go the hard way. We can continue working.
So on that, there has been a lot of discussion. I would say people check 𝐻𝐢𝐬𝐿 and Polymarket every day, probably, on where we stand with clarity. How close do you think we are to getting the 60 votes, and what would it take? We talked about ethics, so we know that that's big.
Wait, do you have any bets down? I don't want to violate any laws here.
I do not.
Okay, just want to make sure. Don't get me in trouble. I truly believe in legislation, and this is whether it's been the House, in my state House days, in anything. I don't give up on legislation until I absolutely have no other options, right? I think legislation is something that is always breathing, and you could breathe more life into it. What I've seen so far has been a real earnestness among Democrats, who, by the way, take a lot of political hits from their own party for trying to work this product to create a good outcome. And they've been working in a very earnest manner, and they still want to see this pass. What I've seen, when it comes to the ethics provisions, you've seen Democrats and Republicans openly, someone like Senator Tillis, and quietly other Republicans saying that they want to see good ethics provisions that covers everybody so they can also go and talk positively about this. And then we also have seen another rift here that I think people just aren't recognizing. One of the things that stopped a lot of momentum going prior to the recess was we had 4 to 5 Republicans that were very worried about the yield and interest legislation that comes to what was part of clarity. That didn't show up until the last minute, and I think that has to be resolved within the context of that world. So I still think that there's movement. I still think there's a chance to do it. I think there needs to be want on the other side to actually compromise. I think the president wants this to pass and still have all the power to do whatever he wants, unconstrained, but still say that there is some level of constraint, which I guess in theory is good for him, but it still doesn't get you 60 votes. This is a math problem. How do you get to 60 votes, right? The way to get 60 votes is with good ethics legislation, as well as rounding out some of the things that are still outstanding on the other side of this.
So I would say the industry would say, that's great conversation, and to look at the impact on American innovation, bringing jobs back home, bringing businesses. Is that fair to the industry that we're kind of stuck, between the political and what's good for overall all Americans? And what can the industry do right now to help with the process to move it forward? Because everything that I'm hearing is more focused on politics than actual work that's happening and what businesses are doing.
I mean, Washington, D.C. has this thing called politics. That's the world it is. It's like going to the Casablanca scene and like, oh my God, there's gambling here? I mean, yes. There's politics involved in everything. Look, would this be an issue in any other context? Maybe not. But you have, for the first time, a president that's heavily involved in an industry, heavily involved in industry that is consistently operating and profiting from an industry that is nascent and we're trying to breathe life into and put some guardrails on, right? The fact that they're happening at the same time is something that you just can't ignore. And again, you can't ignore it because you still need 60 votes. Sure. This is the math problem, right? I think the industry, you have a lot of bright people, extremely bright people, a lot of people that are very astute when it comes to math, when it comes to science, when it comes to tech. This, at the end of the day, is a simple math problem. How do you get to 60 votes to pass a bill? The way to get 60 votes to pass a bill is you need to get enough Democrats and Republicans that feel comfortable with voting for something that brings some level of constraint to the White House, to other elected officials, while at the same time, you're right, breathing in life into this industry and having it based here, grow here, and innovate here in the United States only.
Great, thank you so much. Do you think, is there anything else that industry specifically can do right now? We have some industry leaders, again, right now at White House.
Yeah.
I can tell you that we are a 250-member trade. we are on the Hill every day talking to
Oh, I know. I
Democrats
see
and
you guys
Republicans,
everywhere. I mean, just,
So what else could we do? How
Yeah.
else could we show up? Other than, I would say, the White House portion of it,
Sure.
what else could the industry be doing right now?
well, I think the industry, first of all, has been very good. I think when we've seen movement with the White House, it has been because the industry has been involved, right? And having mature voices over there kind of having conversations about what this works in. Number two, encouraging the Senate Democrats and Republicans to continue the negotiations. Don't go for a fast vote. A fast vote gets you a fast result, not necessarily the result you want, right? And it doesn't matter what happens between now and then. You still need 60 votes. The election that's going to come is not going to change that outcome, right? It's still going to need 60 votes. And the best way to get 60 votes, and I tell people 60 is hard, 65 is easier if you think about the politics of it, is to have, again, a moderate bipartisan ethics provision that has been worked out by Republicans and Democrats, finishing out the other areas that Democrats and Republicans have been working on in all the other parts of market structure. We still have the agricultural portion that we got to deal with this. We still have to put this together and somehow get it to the House. And there's a lot of steps to this. And I think any premature movement is going to set it back further. And I just think that it's just, if it's done for partisan reasons, you're going to have partisan outcomes. If we do this for actual industry reasons, then we'll actually have, I think, productive outcome.
Great. Pivoting a little bit, as we saw yesterday, SEC came out with their regs, and now tomorrow there's a CFTC meeting on innovation happening. How do you feel about proactively agencies putting out information that can help the industry, or do you think the long-term path forward is still to get clarity done the right way?
I think you should be able to do both, because we will follow a lot what the boards will say, the commissions will say anyway. Especially, you have experts on there that we will follow, and we actually already talk to on a back and forth basis. So I think to continue making sure the industry is growing, that it is getting the guidance it needs, I think that they should both be moving forward while we're still creating. I think long term, for stability, I think you want laws passed. You want laws passed that will have certainty, that will be cemented in place, and then will not be necessarily subject to an administration that could either be pro-industry or anti-industry. And so, if we want people to continue to invest, especially in the United States market, we're going to have long-term legislation to actually encourage that long-term investment. But in the meantime, you don't want to hold up the speed of innovation. And so, the different commissions issuing regs, regulations, and guidelines, I think, is actually not a bad thing at all.
All we want to do, I think, as an industry is to ensure that the innovation keeps happening and actually keeps happening in US and not anywhere outside.
We do too.
So thank you. Yes, so absolutely. When I say we, I do mean Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah, no,
right?
exactly.
Everyone. So I don't separate, the industry.
Look, I think, we were, with the Genius Act, if you would have, spoken to us about the Genius Act, at the beginning of the session, you would never imagine that you're going to end up getting 19 Democrats to vote for it, right? People said you could barely get this over the top, good luck, blah, 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 right? Because we worked it, because we were able to work in a bipartisan manner, because we, and to give credit to Democrats and Republicans, even after there was a lot of mayhem, fighting, we decided to get back in there, touch gloves, and keep going. We were able to pass a very, very, very good product. The same thing is happening with market structure. Market structure is more complex. That's why it's taking longer. Right? That's the most simplest reason. The politics is more complex also, right? But if we keep the same attitude we have from Genius Act and bring this over to market structure, we can land this plane. But we have to try to, number one, you have to actually want to land the plane, right? There are certain elements of politics that would love not to land this plane to make this a political issue, both on the left and on the right. And there's those that want to govern and want to land this plane and continue to making sure that we're innovating in this world.
Senator Gallego, this wouldn't be possible. We wouldn't be here with Clarity Act without all of your support and yours and your team's hard work. So thank you for that.
Thank you for your time.
And thank you for this today.
Thank you.
Thank you so
much.
much.
Yes.